Okay, let's take a look at some more examples. X minus 1 equals 1/2. So, I have a 2 on the bottom. Now, I'm going to times those sides by 2. Sure, I could add 1 to both sides and then solve, but I want to teach you higher level steps. So if I want to times those sides by 2, I'm going to put brackets around the left-hand side, then say 2 times n times 2, timesing both sides by 2. On the right-hand side, I have 2 over 2, which is 1, cross it off. On the left-hand side, I'm going to distribute, so 2 times x is 2x. 2 times negative 1 is negative 2. On the right-hand side, we're left with 1. Now I have a negative 2. I can add 2 to both sides, perform the opposite operation to both sides. On the left-hand side, negative 2 plus 2 is 0. Cross it off. 2x equals 1 plus 2 is 3. On the left-hand side, we have 2 times x. Performing the opposite operation to both sides is dividing both sides by 2. And we get x equals 3 over 2. Checking our answer, x minus 1 equals 1/2. Carefully substituting our answer, 3 over 2 back in for x and carrying everything else down. 3 over 2 minus 1, 1's over 1. Adding and subtracting fractions with the lowest common denominator. The lowest common denominator is 2. I had to times the bottom by 2, and I had to times the top by 2. 1 times 2 is 2. On the top left, we have 3, haven't touched it. On the right-hand side, we have 1/2. On the left-hand side, we have a denominator of 2. 3 minus 2 is 1. The right-hand side is 1/2. X equals 3 over 2. Check mark. Take a look, quick little short form. X minus 1 equals 1/2. Well, I have a 2 on the bottom. I can times those sides by 2. Simply putting brackets around the left-hand side. Now the 2 is on the bottom right, so it comes up and times is on the top left. Then distributing and doing exactly the same algebra we just did on the left there. So again, in the notes, you can see I did the algebra where I added 1 to both sides and then added fractions. But we don't like adding fractions as much as multiplication. So lots of the times we're just going to multiply both sides by the LCD. In the last question, it just happened to be 2, so the LCD was 2, so we just times both sides by 2. But now we're going to see a little bit more. We want to think more like timesing both sides by the LCD. X minus 1/4 equals 1/2. So sure, I could add 1/4 to both sides, but I'd rather times both sides by the LCD. So I'm just going to put brackets around the whole thing. The LCD is 4. I'm going to times both sides by 4. 4 times. Go back to fractions and learn about LCDs. The lowest common denominator is the lowest number both denominators go into. The lowest number 2 and 4 both go into is 4. So I'm going to times both sides by the LCD, which is 4. On the left-hand side, I'm going to distribute. 4 times x is 4x. 4 times negative 1/4 is negative 1. On the right-hand side, 1/2 times 4 is 2. Then I'm going to add 1 to both sides. Negative 1 plus 1 is 0. Cross it off. 4x equals 2 plus 1 is 3. Divide both sides by 4. X equals 3 over 4. Circle your answer. Check your answer. Rewrite the question. X minus 1/4 equals 1/2. Carefully substitute the x value in, substituting with brackets. So 3 over 4 minus 1 over 4 equals 1/2. 3 minus 4, on the left-hand side, we have a lowest common denominator of 4. 3 minus 1 is 2. The right-hand side is 1/2. On the left-hand side, we can simplify our fraction. 1/2 equals 1/2. Near the answer, x equals 3 over 4 off to the left. Check mark. Timesing both sides by the LCD. So let's shrink that up a little bit. I hope you're writing smaller than I am. So that last question at the bottom of the page, let's take a look at x over 2 plus 1 over 4 equals 1 over 3. Now again, you could simply subtract 1/4 from both sides, but again, we're going to times both sides by the LCD. The LCD is 12. This time I'm just going to put brackets around the whole thing and just say times 12, rather than on the left and the right. Then I'm going to distribute the 12 into all things. I'm going to times the x over 2 by 12. I'm going to times the x by 12, and we get 12x divided by 2, or think 12 divided by 2 is 6. So we just have 6x either way. 12 times x is 12x, divided by 2 is 6. Or 12 divided by 2 is 6, times x is 6x. A quarter times 12 is 3. A third times 12 is 4. Minus 3 from both sides. 6x equals 1. Divide both sides, divide both sides by 6. Why don't I do a shortcut? Cross it off, put it on the other side. X equals 1/6. Rewriting the question, x over 2 plus 1/4 equals 1/3. Carefully substituting with brackets. Now, this is where it gets complicated because I have to substitute for x, 1/6, back in for x with brackets. I have to carry everything else down, so over 2. Then I have to be very careful as where my overs are. So my regular overs were there. I substitute for x using full-size fractions. Now, I have to work on this thing. So I have 1/6 divided by 2. 2 over 1. I'm dividing fractions. Go back to the fraction section and learn better about how to divide fractions. But if I'm dividing fractions, I can just simply flip and multiply. So we get 1 over 12. 1 times 1 is 1. 6 times 2 is 12. Plus a quarter equals, that should be a 1/3 on the right-hand side. I'm correcting the last step on the right-hand side to say 1/3. And 1/12 plus 1/4 is 1/3. I could further add and subtract fractions, but back to the left, x equals 1/6, check mark. So, multiplying both sides by the LCD. It's going to be way simpler than adding and subtracting fractions throughout the first couple steps. We're going to be using all of these methods all the way until calculus and physics and beyond.